Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does India have much of a navy?
They do, and they also have a growing navy, both in terms of size and in terms of capability. You know, India even more so than China. China still has a number of internal domestic and economic issues. So even though they've got a very rapidly growing economy, it still is, you know, there's still a lot of challenges. They don't enjoy the kind of secure domestic environment that we enjoy in the United States. By any stretch of the imagination, the political systems are not anywhere near as mature. The same is true in India as well. In fact, maybe to a greater extent, in terms of dealing with poverty and sort of the haves and the have-nots throughout India. But they are emerging as an increasingly capable country in the maritime environment. You know, they are of the mind, I think, that the reason we call it the Indian Ocean is because it's the Indian Ocean. It's, you know, it surrounds India, and so they'd like to have more influence, I think, in that regard. Unfortunately, everything India does is viewed through a special lens that Pakistan wears, just as everything that Pakistan does is viewed through special lenses that the Indians wear. And one of the things I learned, in particular over the last couple of years, where I spent a lot of time in the Central Command area of responsibility, is it's hard, and it's hard for us as Americans to really understand this because we just don't think this way. But the Indians genuinely don't trust the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis genuinely do not trust the Indians. And so, if you can imagine where, you know, everything the Canadians did or everything the Mexicans did, we viewed as a potential act of war. That's how they viewed things. And so any progress made, the Pakistanis are trying to grow their navy as well. And they don't have a very large navy, but they have an incredibly professional navy. It runs as well as we run our navy or the British run their navy, but it's much smaller and less capable. And so whenever they set to sea, the Indians view that with concern, and when the Indians set to sea, the Pakistanis view that with concern. So we spend a lot of time looking at what the different navies of the world are doing, trying to understand what that means to us in the U.S. Navy, but also trying to understand what it might mean to other countries. And so one of the things, you know, a little bit off the nautical theme, but when you look at Iran as a potential nuclear power, that doesn't sit very well with the United States. But imagine being Qatar, where you share what is, I think, the world's largest known gas oil field in the middle of the Arabian Gulf. They share that with the Iranians. Well, all of a sudden, their partner, their neighbor, is a nuclear power. That changes the whole balance of power in that region, and it changes in ways that are difficult for us to think about. Who are the nations that we see as power brokers in that region? Generally, it's Egypt and Saudi Arabia are two big ones. And then you can make an argument about where Iraq or Iran or Pakistan stand in all of that. That doesn't, you know, you don't even have to bring the Israelis in to make your head hurt. It's understanding that all of this is interwoven, and you know, one nation does something, and a lot of other nations have a reaction to that. And what we can't do, and we sometimes are guilty of doing this, is assume that everybody sees the world the same way we do, and everybody doesn't see the world the same way we do. So, okay, a little bit more about our people, and then I'm obviously happy to answer questions. A little bit about the Navy. We are a 285 ship Navy. I think we're up to 280. No, we're 285. That's today's figure. But 40% of our ships are underway, and that's a lot. If you've ever owned a boat, boats need a lot of maintenance, a lot of TLC, and so if 4 out of 10 of your ships are underway on any given day, that's a lot. And of that, 37 of our ships are on deployment. So the difference between that is when we were getting ready to deploy, we would go off the coast of Southern California and operate in practice. We were underway. Now we're deployed, and that means we won't be back to our home port for months. So when we talk about forward presence, more than a third of the Navy is present, is forward today. Almost half of our submarines are forward. And so this is why, you know, 26 submarines is a lot of 50-some submarines that we have, and to have 47% of them underway and deployed, you know, there's a lot of ocean to cover and not a lot of assets to cover away. Okay, next. Next. There are 11, and 10 of them are Nimitz class, and then Enterprise is CVN-65, which is our first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. So, we just commissioned the George H.W. Bush here 2 months ago, maybe, not long ago, and decommissioned Kitty Hawk, USS Kitty Hawk, you know, so, like the day before. So we didn't, you know, we kept it at 11. You're all taxpayers, so this is how much it's costing you, and hopefully you'll find it's worth the price of admission. But it's an expensive endeavor. What I find most interesting about this figure is if you're the Chief of Naval Operations, you realize that you've got $146 billion in fiscal year 2009 to run your Navy, and that's operations, that's research and development, it's airplane and ship acquisition, and it's payroll. And 40% of that figure is payroll. So right off the top, and by payroll it's the pay and benefits, it's the medical benefits. Half of our sailors are married. Half of our enlisted sailors, much different than the demographics of, say, 20 or 30 years ago, where we had a lot of young sailors right out of high school that do a hitch for a couple of years and then go on to something else. They're more inclined to stay, and they're also much more inclined to be married, even at a young age, E1s, E2s, E3s, coming into the service. And so if they join the service, they have health benefits, but so does their family. And all of that costs money. And so right away, you've got to take 40% off this bottom line figure, and that's what you have left for operations and for acquisition and all of the other things that you have to do. We're just about 500,000 people strong. What's most interesting about that to me is if you know, the Army's bigger than that. They're over 1 million if you include the reserves and the Guard. The Air Force is a little bit larger than I think the Navy is. The Marine Corps is a little bit smaller. All right, hold on to your seats. But about 2% of the population in the United States ever either is in uniform or ever wore a uniform. And so increasingly, much different than what it was, you know, at the end of World War II, every family either had somebody in uniform or knew somebody that was in uniform. Today, that's not the case. And so, you know, for people like myself, or even people like you all that live in Hawaii, which is a big Navy state, you're used to seeing sailors, but go to South Dakota or Wyoming, and there's nothing wrong with those places. There just aren't a lot of soldiers or sailors or airmen and Marines once you get out of the fleet concentration areas. So a very small amount of the population actually understands or has the opportunity to interface with folks that are in the military. Okay, one more thing.
You said is it 2% of the adult population or 2%?
It's 2% of the population.
It's still tiny.
Yeah. Go ahead. Just a little bit about what we're kind of demographically like. We